One morning in Japan, at probably about 6 a.m., I was waiting on the Shinkansen track. It's a bullet train track. And it turns out there was a little woman sweeping the platform with a wicker brush from bamboo shoots in the middle of the most high-tech place I'd ever been. And for some reason, they have this ability to, like, accept that the very new and the very old can coexist simultaneously. Something that I learned when we came back here doesn't exist on the same level. Here, everything either seems to be new or old. And what was interesting as a young architect was to say, okay, let's find a part of the city that's very old. Let's find a part of the city that's run down, but is still filled with some incredible potential. In the case of this church that we're looking at, it's a stone and a brick building built in the 1890s that has incredible floor spaces and high ceilings and everything, to the point where we've kind of discarded it as a society and don't accept that we can place the new with the old. I'm going to go in with a team, have assembled this crew. We're going to go in and turn it into something of an arts collaborative and try and inject the new into the old.
Kate and I, first, we've always been looking to find a place, and then we ran into Charlie, and he was kind of like wanting to do the same thing or a similar thing, and so we all got together, started looking at buildings.
I got to know him real quick, just from not really knowing him at all, and Steve kept thinking, you know, I kept asking him, like, what do you think about this guy? You know, the voice of reason, because Steve and I had known each other for a few years. And we just both agreed he's a little crazy. He brought up this idea of a building, and I had always thought the same thing, like, since I don't have a family right away, it might be nice to have some sort of a nest place where you can, you know, something to hold on to. But, so eventually we found this place.
The first building we looked at had some chemical tanks in it. And the tanks were way underground. It was a paint factory, good-looking building, but unfortunately toxic. So next door, we found a laundromat, and it turned out the laundromat had been burned down and there were other problems. So we ended up with a church. Church located right here.
Yeah, Charlie initially brought up the idea of forming a corporation and that. So, of course, that involves getting a lawyer to fill out all the documents that you have to be a corporation. So when Charlie first came in, he said, you know, I just want the basic, you know, corporation form set up. You know, we only have about $2,000 to spend. You know, what can you do? And they said, you know, at first they said no, and they said, well, yeah, maybe we can work with you. And so, you know, the day of the closing, I go down to save expenses, pick him up in my old car, I think even Kate's car, with all the little animals glued on it. Picked the guy up, drove him to the closing, and he helped out a little bit there. And then I drove him back, and then like a week later, we got the bill in the mail, and it was like for over $5,000. And it's like, Charlie opened it up, called him up on the phone, and got a hold of the secretary and said, stop all work. And she goes, do you want to talk to him? And Charlie goes, no, that's just going to cost me money, more money. So it's just like, just tell him to stop all work.
Philip Morris has sold cigarettes to some degree by capitalizing on the spirit of the American frontier, as I believe Busch Beer and the rest of the Anheuser-Busch products have as well. Now, sure, there's an American frontier in history, but the new frontier is perhaps what we are going to experience in this city. Not because it's more hostile or less hostile, just because it's empty. There's a lot of empty stuff, vacant space, vacant buildings. We're going in there. Okay, they're not all the utilities hooked up. Like the early frontiersmen and women and the homesteaders, they had to fend for themselves. Hunter-gatherers in a postmodern world. We hope to make some example of ourselves in a very positive way.
We're just three small little people in a big city that we've got our little chunk and we've got to do something with it. But I don't know, there's a lot here to work with. You know, and they don't make stuff like this anymore. That's the long and short of it. It's like you get, could get some prefabbed home somewhere. And this is, although it's falling apart around us, we just got to resurrect it a little bit. It's pretty tight building.
This is not just some church in a bad neighborhood. This is like half a block of Philadelphia. So we've got this warehouse that'll fit about 4 or 5 tractor trailers, a church that's 3 floors, and this middle building, which we don't even know what to do with it. It's like a little row house.
When we first moved here, it was piles and piles of rubble kind of everywhere. We had to kind of dig ourselves out, and now we've thrown away 4 tons of trash.
I think the first month and a half or 2 months, we just hauled stuff out. We had this guy come over with a big dump truck, and we filled that thing up like 4 or 5 times already, just with, it was just left with a lot of odds and ends of furniture and just stuff. It had like a loft system that went along both sides of the walls on all 3 floors, 7 feet high, that we had to tear down, and that took weeks alone just to tear down.
When we first got to the church, we knew it was going to be filled up with stuff, but we didn't expect the former owner to leave as many of the furniture remnants from his company. Turns out his father had died and the whole business was shut down. They just gave us the keys, walked out the door. So some of the things, like this office, we're going to tear down. We've been clearing it out. All of the old filing cabinets, the Rolodexes, the notes pinned up on the walls from the former business. Because when they shut down, they didn't feel like taking anything out of here. We bought it like that. Thought, great, filing cabinets, until we pulled out the drawers and realized there were like 2.5 tons worth of their paperwork from the last 20 years. So we've been kind of shuffling that out and poking around, found an old Xerox machine that maybe we can get to work, a lot of keys to miscellaneous locks, little notes and memorabilia that go back several decades. Here are all their carbon sheets. 3 colors, and since there are 3 of us partners working on the thing, we make our big list, like putting in the shower, fixing the roof, and then we go down and we have tasks. So we're trying to use the stuff as well for tearing out some of these walls. We found their old tools we're putting to use. We're going to use those later today as we tear off some of these walls, which we have left some posters up. Like, for example, don't leave booby traps or pick up your tools. Good motto, and also our favorite motto of all, right over here. Every accomplishment, great or small, starts with the same decision, I'll try. So it turns out now we've moved into the largest 3-bedroom house in the city of Philadelphia. Luckily, it comes with this great 50-car garage, which we bought along with the whole block. A garage we're going to turn into a workshop and an art studio, a place to make sculpture and furniture, all kinds of things that will eventually get displayed on the first floor of what was the abandoned church. So we're turning that part into more of a gallery and an event space. This is a neighborhood that was classified by the federal government as one of the 12 worst neighborhoods in America. We're trying to kickstart it with a little bit of life. Probably the inspector, like we need to talk to that guy right now.
We needed to do the roof on what we call Building B, so we happened to do it on the hottest day of the year. Why? I think mainly because Charlie wanted to get it done, and it's, one of the aspects of his personality is when there's something that he feels has to be done. He's relentless on, so it's like, come on, let's do it, let's do it, let's do it. And after a while, you get to a point where it's like, okay, we'll do it. It doesn't matter if it's the hottest day of the year or whatever. He's he's a big part of why we're here and what's going on here. And he just has like all this energy. It's like he'll sleep and then he'll get up, and all of a sudden once he's up, he's just like, run. And then he doesn't stop running until he goes back to sleep again at like midnight or whatever.
The difference, Charlie and Steve, I was thinking what a trio we are, how we're all different. And it sort of complements, each other in our different ways. And I was thinking one way is really, if you watch the way they treat the cat, it's very different. Steve strokes the cat and, loves the cat. And he's a very gentle, kind of slow, methodic guy. And Charlie just kind of, pushes, hello, cat, and pushes him off the table. He's like in the way.
We spent all our time and energy fixing the hut, so rather than let Building B fall to total ruin, we found Caleb and Rashid, both capable of renovating the space.
I think I always wanted to live in a warehouse because, just because, you know, I don't really just want to live somewhere, like live in a little cubicle or something. I want to like do things actually, and you can't, if you have a nice apartment, you can't like, you know, you can't weld on the floor. You know, it's too small. You can't make a mess because it like destroys the place. You need like more room to throw shit around and make noise. You need lots of. You can't have neighbors around. You gotta basically be alone and have lots of space. So that's why I moved into a warehouse.
When I first came in, let me see. I saw the ad in the paper in the Philadelphia Weekly, and it said reasonable rates, tools and talent. And that was the first thing that got me, tools and talent. I'm like, okay. And when I got here, it was just like, bam! Charlie the cartoon character, he's cool. And he showed me the first floor of the building, and it was just like, he said, there's a lot of work. And I was like, oh, that's cool, because I can see a lot of things. And he was just like, I don't see what you can do with it. It's like, I don't see it, but as long as you do, it's fine.
The Trash and Fashion show was just terrific. Had this guy, Jack, comes in, makes clothes out of trash. And I'm totally enamored with like found and recycled materials, so the clothing was like logical connection. Runway shows, neon, we built about a 30-foot runway, and it was really hit it on the head. People loved it, and that sort of started a lot of this interest in what we're doing here over at the hut.
Just being here, I meet so many people because like Charlie and Steve and Kate know tons of people. They like mail out like 300 invitations every time they have a party because they know so many people.
At first I didn't think anything of it, like, oh sure, I'll do it. But when you have to walk out there in front of, 300 people, we've had so many, such variations of people, from like a very gay community to all like black rap groups, like a hip hop crowd at our last party, and they're all intermixed, and so far so good.
By being here, I don't need to have a gallery. This is a gallery for me. It's like a showroom. When people walk in here, if I have something here, people are going to see it. So, like, this is my total opportunity. Not only do I have a place to show stuff, but I can actually make things here, and I have people who are interested in what I'm doing that aren't going to, like, totally get in my way and, like, try to trip me up. And really, Charlie is such a fiend for promotion. Like almost anything I do that's weird, he goes, oh yeah, give me that, we'll put that in the downstairs and everybody will buy it. Steve really blows me away as far as being a technician, and he knows all kinds of stuff that I don't know, so, which is something that is really valuable. That's what people go to art school for in the first place, because they can't, nobody in their neighborhood knows how to blow glass, so they gotta pay a fee to go talk to people that know how to do it. That's what it's all about. So I'm getting that stuff for free, which is cool.
I think that trash picking is one of the inspirations for Kate's sculpture work. A lot of the artwork that's made over at the hut comes from people who are using found and discarded objects. Sometimes you lose the trash, you lose the edge.
Funny that Kate is actually very similar to me in taste. We're every time I trash pick something, she's right on it, she wants it, and vice versa, we like the exact same stuff.
The Inquirer runs in their Sunday magazine this huge 2-page spread. Kate and Steve and I are in the tub. We look like American heroes. And all of a sudden, the phone starts ringing.
And the article in general just really got a lot of people interested in the idea, and people were calling up, I have an old stove for you, I have an old bed or whatever. So we've been going around picking up different things. So in those ways, it really, or people just calling up saying, you know, I love what you're doing.
Well, one woman calls in and says, I got this bed for you. We're like, great, a free bed. Go over there and ask her, you know, what's the story with the bed? She goes, well, I've been waiting to tell you the story till we went down to the garage. Turns out the bed belonged to a former boyfriend that ran the SDS, Students for Democratic Society. Okay, whatever. She's asking us if we heard about it. We're like, no way. What is it, like a band or something? No, apparently the head of it was so radical, he started the Weather Underground out in Berkeley. Of course, he's now in hiding. She got stuck with the bed and thought that I would be a great recipient for this piece of furniture. So now I'm thinking, cool. I have been, by association, attached to a radical social, you know, revolutionary.
The state of disrepair with the buildings and the architecture was just a crime. And it was such a booming place for, you know, we had Schmidt's Beer, we had Stetson Hat Company, we had Schlitz, we had a lot of beer companies, and all that used to be such a huge money makers. And now if we just could bring in more business to try and stimulate this economy a little more and give people jobs, and repair some of this stuff that's just decaying. It's just, I'm really curious to know what the cost of it is to tear down a building as opposed to giving it to somebody and letting them fix it before it turns into rubble.
I grew up in North Philly. I grew up at 20th and Susquehanna, which is not too far from here. So being back in this neighborhood, a lot of people are scared of North Philly. Oh my God, you're in North Philly. I'm like, it's no big deal. It's not as bad as everybody thinks.
The only time that we ever got broken into was, and I was here when it happened, I was like sitting on the toilet minding my own business. And all of a sudden there's like double doors, like these giant swinging doors, like stable doors on the back garage. And they were totally easy to break into anyway. So I was sitting there and like I heard the doors like moving around and stuff, and I looked over and I could see that like one of the doors was like being pushed towards the inside. Somebody was trying to push the door open. And I got a hammer and I went down and I could see like these two legs like sticking through the door, and they're like squeezing their way through the crack in the door. And I just like crept up on him and I just fucking like smacked him right on the leg with a hammer. And like he immediately, like the legs just went like right back out the door. And then I opened the door and like he was already on his feet and running down the street, and I like chased him, I don't know, 20 feet, and then he like turns around, he goes, I thought it was abandoned, you know, like you should have told me it wasn't, you should have told me you were in there. You know, that's not fair, no fair. So like, that was it.
This neighborhood is definitely going to pick up, I think, within the next like 10 years, because there's not really too many things going on in terms of like activities for kids to do. So this place is just like perfect. You got all kinds of things going on. You got the art, you got the glass blowing. The more things you have for the kids to do, the better, because if the kids are happy, the parents are happy. They can come home and say, oh, Mom, I learned how to blow glass today. I was sculpting today. I was drawing today. Possibly later on, maybe some more people will come down and say, hey, they got some things going on. Let's go do this down there.
I spent about 20 minutes yesterday walking around looking for a hammer, and the whole time I was thinking about the future. And needless to say, we got a huge house, so I couldn't find the hammer. But what I learned about the future is that if we keep up the pace, we're going to drive everyone, including ourselves, crazy.
By converting the garage into a shared workshop where we can do everything from glass blowing and metal work to tile making and woodworking, we've opened an opportunity to really have this cross-pollination creatively, where people are influenced and affecting each other's work in a very positive way. It's something that would never happen on the same level. We all had isolated studios. Steve knew a friend named Kevin who got a contract to do these 18-inch ceramic tiles. So we're like, cool, we'll check out the tiles. It turns out he's doing them for an architect that's building a meditation hall somewhere down in the Carolinas. So perhaps the most important thing we're actually doing over here at the Hut is not necessarily renovating the building, but providing a place for people to really work and make products. A ceramic studio, Steve's moving his glass blowing shop in there. Kate has all the space for her sculpture studio, metalworking, woodworking, the grip guys from the film industry, neon restoration. We're looking for other people to really move in and share the arts collaborative, and even look for some of these other abandoned buildings in the neighborhood. Because again, the community that is so important to a city is based on people, and that sort of cross connection between races and ethnic groups and cultural interests, everything that makes life, I think, pretty interesting. Out of all the things that I was supposed to remember from high school, I stuck one in the back of my head, and it basically has to do with this French author Voltaire, who wrote something in Candide. All you can do is cultivate your own garden. Beautiful, because of course you can't control that much in the planet. We've bought this little place, it's our garden and it's our future. And we're trying to live the way we think we ought to live because we don't have control over much else.
The Hut, 1996, were the Ghostbusters of the visual arts. Integrated design services, architectural, industrial, fabric, graphic design, glass blowing, metalwork, ceramics, props, sets, events, you name it. 1-800-FIX-A-HUT. If we can't do it, we know who can.